In this lecture, we would like to discuss one of the outstanding and first of the important leading case of India's Supreme Court relating to state of Bihar vs. Kameshwar Singh. So it was a case of 1951. So now we would like to discuss very introduction relating to the case is that the very history of land settlement in India was by Lord Cornwallis in 1793 by implementing Permanent Settlement Act or the establishment of Jamindari system in the province of Bengal and Bihar. And in this particular leading case, the Bihar Land Reforms Act of 1950 was challenged by Kameshwar Singh. So, the very system that was introduced by Lord Cornwallis in 1793 under the Permanent Settlement Act, and that was Zamindari system which created inequality and exploitation of the farmers and cultivators, and it creates a minority landlords in India acquiring in possession of almost 10% agricultural lands. So, in our constitution, a dream was visualized under the directive principle of state policy to bring social and economic justice, and in regards to that the Fast Planning Commission under its auspicious office established the Land Reforms Division under the Planning Commission, and in reference to the very recommendations and suggestions of the Land Reform Commissions, it led to the land reforms by the states in India. In furtherance to that, the state of Bihar brought the Bihar Land Reforms Act 1950. As the case of state of Bihar and Kameshwar Singh is a landmark judgment in Indian legal history that intricately addressed the delicate balance between agrarian reform, social justice, and the right to property. The Supreme Court's ruling upheld the Bihar Land Reforms Act of 1950, recognizing its fundamental role in advancing social and economic justice by redistributing land to benefit the marginalized and promote equitable land ownership. The court's decision underscored the legislative intent behind the act, which aimed to rectify historical injustices and improve the socio-economic conditions of the rural population of India. So, in its judgment, the Supreme Court navigated the complex interplay between the need for transformative land reforms and the protection of individuals' property rights, establishing a precedent that would guide future judicial considerations on issues of land acquisition and compensation. By reaffirming the Act, the court not only reinforced the principles of agrarian justice but also set a significant legal benchmark for balancing reformative objectives with constitutional safeguards. thereby influencing subsequent legal interpretations and policies in the realm of land rights and socio-economic reforms. So now we'll go to the very facts of the case, and it relates to the development of the Constitution's First Amendment Act in 1951, which inserted Article 31A and Article 31B into the Article 31, which deals with right to property. Further, it deals with Article 31, Clause 2 and Article 31, Clause 4. So, in the very leading case, State of Bihar vs.Kameshwar Singh centers on legal validity of Bihar Land Reforms Act of 1950, which sought to dismantle the Jamindari system, a land tenure arrangement where Jamindars collected revenues from tenants and peasants. This act aimed to transfer Jamindari estate to the state and to redistribute land to the tenants and landless peasants, feeding into a broader scheme of land reform following India's independence. So, initially, the legitimacy of the Bihar Land Reforms Act faced significant challenges. However, the introduction of the Constitution's First Amendment Act of 1951, which incorporated articles like 31A and Article 31B into the Indian Constitution, changed the legal landscape. These amendments were designed to shield agrarian reforms laws from being contested based on fundamental rights violations. Despite these constitutional safeguards, opponents of the act argued that it did not serve a public purpose and thus fell outside the protection provided under Article 31, Clause 4. They claimed that the act was discriminatory and lacked adequate compensation provisions as contravening the provisions of Article 31, Clause 2 of the Constitution, which guarantees compensation for the acquisition of private property. So, we would like to discuss those important issues raised in the case, such as public purpose and the provisions of Article 31, Clause 4, and what exactly compensation and how it is explained under the Constitution, and the provisions relating to Article 31, Clause 2, and how it violates the fundamental rights and the under the Act, such as Article 14 and Article 19, Clause 1, Subclause F. So, the primary issues before the apex court or the Supreme Court in the state of Bihar versus Kameshwar Singh, whether the Bihar Land Reforms Act 1950 was enacted for a public purpose and hence protected by Article 31, Clause 4 of the Constitution, whether the compensation provided under the Act was adequate and in compliance with Article 31, Clause 2, whether the Act violated any fundamental rights guaranteed under the Constitution, particularly Article 14, which expressly provides right to equality, and Article 19, Clause 1, Subclause F, which provides regarding acquisition and possession relating to right to property. So now we would like to discuss how the very What for public purpose explained in regards to bring land reforms and social justice, removal of intermediary interest, and equitable distribution of land resources to bring social and economic equality as visualized under the Act show the very provision relating to public purpose as explained in this particular important leading case, State of Bihar vs. Kameshwar Singh, the Supreme Court upheld the principle that acquisition of Jamindari estates under the Bihar Land Reforms Act of 1950 was pursued for a legitimate public purpose. The court carefully examined the Act's intent and determined that its primary objective is to abolish the Jamindari system, which represented an outdated and inequitable land tenure structure, and to redistribute land directly to those who actively cultivated it, was fundamentally aligned with the principles of land reform and social justice by targeting the removal of intermediary land holding interests. The act sought to rectify historical inequalities and promote a more equitable distribution of land resources. The court further emphasized that such goals fit within the constitutional framework's definition of public purpose, recognizing that these reformative objectives were essential for advancing broader societal welfare and aligning with constitutional mandates aimed at fostering social and economic equity, or to bring social and economic equality. This affirmation underscored the Act's alignment with the broader goals of constitutional and legislative reform, reinforcing the legitimacy of its provisions in pursuit of greater social justice. Further, the very word compensation was also explained by the apex court in relating to the provisions of Article 31 Clause 4 and Article 31 Clause 2, as exactly in this very important leading case in State of Bihar vs. Kameshwar Singh. The Supreme Court addressed the matter of compensation by asserting that Article 31 Clause 4 afforded protection to the Bihar Land Reforms Act, even if it did not fully meet the compensation requirements as outlined under Article 31 Clause 2. The majority opinion emphasized that the judiciary could not scrutinize the adequacy of compensation in the context of laws specifically aimed at agrarian reform. This protection was grounded in the understanding that such laws, which are designed to achieve overreaching by the Constitution, were exempted from detailed judicial review concerning compensation adequacy. The court's stance underscored a broader acceptance that legislative measures with significant reformative intent could be shielded from judicial challenges related to compensation, provided they align with the Constitution's goals of advancing social justice and economic equity. And further, another important question raised regarding those discriminatory provisions and violation of Article 14, which explicitly express about right to equality, so in its landmark decision, the apex court in state of Bihar vs. Kameshwar Singh carefully examined the Bihar Land Reforms Act and determined that two specific sections of the act were discriminatory. These provisions were found to treat different classes of zamindars unequally without reasonable justification, thereby violating the fundamental right to equality as guaranteed under Article 14 of the Indian Constitution. This critical finding highlighted the importance of ensuring that legislative measures do not undermine the principle of equal treatment before the law. Despite this, the court's ruling was not solely a critique of the act's discriminatory aspects, it also navigated the broader context of land reforms and social justice. The judgment recognized the significant legislative intent behind the agrarian reform laws, which aim to address historical injustices and redistribute land to benefit those who directly engaged in its cultivation. In balancing the imperative of advancing land reforms with the protection of fundamental rights, the court provided a framework for assessing similar laws in the future. This decision established a precedent for evaluating the constitutionality of land reform initiatives, ensuring that they align with both the goals of social equity and the constitutional guarantee of individual rights. And in that connection, in relating to the very leading case, State of Bihar vs. Kameshwar Singh, we would like to discuss some important related leading case such as the Raja Suryapal Singh vs. State of UP and West Bengal vs. Bela Banerjee. So, in particularly in case of Raja Suryapal Singh vs. State of Uttar Pradesh, this case upheld the UP Jamindari Abolition and Land Reforms Act 1951, reinforcing the principle that agrarian reform laws aimed at abolishing intermediary interest and redistributing land were for public purposes. While in West Bengal versus Bela Banerjee, the validity of the 1948 West Bengal Land Development and Planning Act was contested. The act was determined to constitute a public purpose and allowed for the purchase of land for refugee resettlement. So, now we would like to conclude the very discussion relating to State of Bihar versus Kameshwar Singh, one of the landmark judgments delivered by the Supreme Court in 1952. So, the Land Reforms Act of 1950, which sought to dismantle the Jamindari system and reallocate land to tenants and peasants. The court affirmed that the Act fulfilled the legitimate public purpose and was thus shielded under Article 31 Clause 4 of the Constitution despite its departure from the requirement for adequate compensation. Nevertheless, the court identified two provisions within the Act as discriminatory, violating the equality principle as enshrined in Article 14 of the Constitution of India relating to right to equality, this landmark decision struck a delicate balance between advancing social justice through agrarian reform and safeguarding fundamental rights, setting a crucial precedent for future land acquisition legislation and influencing subsequent constitutional amendments related to property rights.